Yeah, and so there's so many exciting things. I think to your point, though, it requires someone with some level of forethought and
Hmm.
leadership to be able to kind of see what is possible and then make it end up happening. And that's why I get so excited. The people that are on the forefront of this technology, the people that are posting YouTube videos, the people that are using ChatGPT on a daily basis, the people that are reading blogs or listening to podcasts or what have you on this. I think the people that are going to be called to be the kind of future leaders of these types of companies, or at least be the future leaders in terms of how AI gets adopted and deployed across these organizations. And for example, I'll give you data doesn't just sit anywhere. Data
Hmm.
sits in clouds. My whole background is in telecom and data storage, and I helped launch Google Cloud Platform, the first managed service provider on there. I worked at Cisco for many years. I worked in telecom and doing fiber optic infrastructure
Hmm.
and working with telecoms and telcos and things like that. And so, all of this is super near and dear to my heart. But what it did require was the ability to kind of see around corners and see how is this going to be ultimately used. And so data is sitting in Slack. It's not sitting on hard drives anymore, right? It's sitting in S3
Right.
buckets on AWS, and it's sitting in Salesforce.com, and it's sitting in Slack, and it's sitting in Snowflake. And so I think the good news is that so many of these language models have democratized this world of generative AI. But what has not totally been figured out yet, I would say, in most of these bigger types or even smaller types of organizations, like, okay, I love the promise of what this can do, but I don't know totally how to implement it and where everything needs to get kind of read. But we're starting to connect all of those different data repositories that I just talked about. And again, finance uses those, tech uses those, sales and marketing uses
Yeah.
them, and starting to really start to understand, okay, literally the earliest applications for us were like, can I just use a wiki? And so that any of the
Yeah.
folks working on certain dev can ask certain questions and then it's ingested, millions of rows of data and kind of pulls it back in. On the sales and marketing front, we're moving at such a pace. Like, think about the types of questions that a salesperson might ask in a world in which we're selling in 60 countries and have 22 global offices. And it's like, do we do cross-border integration with Lazada in Vietnam? It's like the person that knows that answer might be on a meeting for the next 4 days. And so it's like the ability to kind of, again, democratize that data internally, but that's not something that I could go access somewhere else outside of Pattern. That hard work has to be done inside of Pattern first so that we can utilize it. Otherwise, it's just like noise out there. If I don't know the close rates, if I don't know the pipeline coverage, if I don't know all these different super detailed and germane to Pattern's actual operations, I might get some benchmarking of stuff out there, but it's like, it really
Hmm.
has to start with the homegrown data and start to expand from there. And so those are just a handful of the things and again, it's not even democratized within our own organizations. You have certain leaders within, again, finance or tech or sales and marketing or
Hmm.
operations that are kind of being the standard bearers of, this is what the new world needs to look like. Everyone needs to start getting on and rowing it, because we're about to burn the boats on the other side of the Rubicon here. So yeah, I mean, again, I think we're still just at the very beginning of this. But if you think about, like I said before, there are a lot of these large language models that are somewhat democratized. I mean, again, many companies are not building their own models. They're just going to pull one off the shelf that
Yeah.
exists, and then they're going to use it, point it at whatever direction they need to point it at their own internal data sources. For Pattern, we're lucky because, again, in the last 10 years, we're Amazon's largest seller. We have more than 300 trillion rows of data in our databases. We're collecting over 60 billion data points every single day. And so we are sitting on this massive lake of e-commerce. We're Amazon's largest seller. We have APIs into their advertising. We have APIs into their fulfillment and logistics. We have APIs into their seller data. And then, we have other access of data we've been collecting just for years on everything from search terms, competitive dynamics, to pricing information, to, category trends and flexing, and home and kitchen, and, health and household and beauty. And it's just like this mind-blowing, almost inconceivable amount of information that we're sitting on top of. And to now be able to have this richness that's all proprietary information that we've been gathering for 10 years, by the way, that we just sit on, it provides to us, from my perspective, a huge competitive advantage when brands want to come in and ask the questions you might expect they would be asking, like, what is my market share at the most granular level. Show me the 10 subcategories that I play in. Who are the largest competitors in those categories? How much market share am I leading? How fast is the category growing? Am I losing share? Am I stealing share? Can I ride the coattails? And then, I didn't really even go to this. Like, we acquired a social media company that does influencer marketing. We acquired a damn PIM that manages content across and syndicates that content across tons of different retailers. So we're now able to start to peer in and start to understand, okay, we are starting to see a massive spike in Stanley mugs. And let me understand, when did that actually start to take off? What new search term velocity has increased because of that? And then now let's layer on top of social media, who are the TikTok influencers driving the most off-platform traffic to these markets? Like, you have these clusters and constellations of information that, again, it's just so hard to do at a normal person level. And then you're using that generative AI on top of that to now say, okay, now that we know this is a thing, show me for 80% of the revenue going through this subcategory, go parse out, use AI to go parse out all the sentiment analysis of all the reviews and all the imagery and all the content and all the questions on any of these listings, and start to summarize the ways in which brands are communicating value to the customer. And it might say something like 74% of the time on purchases that are on the 80% of the revenue, everyone is pitching this thing as a camping accessory. And then we might be able to say, okay, we think this is more of a sports and outdoor story beyond just the niche of camping. We are now going to tell AI to start creating other lifestyle type of imagery, and we're going to test this against the benchmark to see if it actually helps us steal share. So you can start to see how all of this will come together, but it's based on that leadership I talked about. It's based on the proprietary data that you have, and then it's based on the reach that you have. Other brands can't do this because, again, we're managing this for hundreds of brands across Amazon's largest platform, and then we're using social and sentiment and all this other data on top of it to like start to blow people's minds. So I still think we're at the beginning, but hopefully that gives you a sense of the way it's starting to come together.